Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. And also here is RCCA Media, and you can view this 24/7 on their really nice website, rccamedia.org. Why are they here? Well, it's because it's time for a Wood County update with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Carl. I'm a little bit nervous about this upcoming weather forecast. I'm looking over our cameraman's shoulder, and I'm looking at the weather radar from outside the room, and it's not looking real promising.
No. Well, especially for those of you watching on RCCA Media, that dark orange right there, what you're looking right there, that's the highest amount possible, 12 to 18 inches, and Wood County is right in it.
I'm glad I didn't put my snowblower away, but while we're on that, It certainly helps if the residents of our county out there are cognizant of what's coming, that they take precaution, and they try to make it a little bit easier for those plow drivers out there and those emergency vehicles that we have. So if you have the ability to not be out on the road, that would be of great help.
And already, town of Grand Rapids declared a snow emergency, and I'm anticipating everybody's going to be declaring snow emergencies, which means keep your vehicles off the street. And but what does this do? This could be an expensive storm.
What does this do to budgets?
Yeah.
Blows them up.
Okay, well, this is something you and I have talked about. You can have what can be a mild winter, and it's into spring. We've turned the calendar, and then this happens.
There's a big difference. If we get 2 to 8 inches, and I always say they promise us more than we actually get as a snowmobiler, but 2 to 6, 8, you can handle that pretty easily, and it's a tens of thousands of dollars event. But if all of a sudden it turns into 12 to 18 of slush, and not only do you have to plow it, but you have to replow it with the blowing and drifting, you have to salt it. Yeah, those events can run $25,000 to $50,000, and that quickly blows apart a snow plowing budget. And oftentimes it happens at the very end of the year like this. You figure you're out of the woods, so to speak. You've dismounted those plows from trucks. You're getting ready to do spring work, and all of a sudden winter rears its ugly head, and here we go again.
Yeah, that's it. Well, you just brought up something. I was wondering about this. In fact, Pam and I were talking about it over lunch. City crews, county crews, they were probably getting into their spring mode, getting ready to start doing their spring maintenance projects, and now all of a sudden they got to
retooling up again, and that takes time and effort. And you try not to drive those trucks around with plows on them if you don't need to, because that's additional wear and tear on those. So you dismount those and get ready for the next season. But this kind of thing occasionally happens. This probably will be the last significant snowfall of the year. So I hope it isn't in that 18-inch range. I hope it's more in that 8. If we were back in December, I'd probably be hoping for the 18.
Yeah, I know.
That's not the case right now.
But this follows a major rainstorm and flooding that happened in Wood County. Were any county facilities affected at all?
No, we got, well, I shouldn't say no. We did have some culverts wash out up at North Park and a road we had just put in. That's not a comforting thought. We're going to have to redo those. There was some minor road damage, but not really to county highways. We got to the point where a little bit more rain would have really been damaging. We kind of skated by with some pretty high river levels. But I think our experience from, what was that, about 5 years ago, somewhere in that vicinity, probably helped us a lot in the preparedness, the planning, and where we were going to go and how we were going to take care of our infrastructure.
Okay. Well, there's some interesting things going on with the county and with the state, et cetera. The state legislature wrapped up their session as both Wood County Board Chairman and as the representative of county boards across the state. Any concerns with what the state legislature did or did not do?
You've probably heard it said before, but I always wonder what I'm going to say when I get here, because Carl doesn't. We don't prepare these ahead of time.
No, I like getting your honest reaction.
The questions get asked off the cuff. I don't think there's anything that really surprised me out of the legislature. It's an election year. Sometimes I find it mind-boggling that the legislature is not going to be in session for another 10 months. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't some work happening behind the scenes, and maybe some committees meet and and hearings going on, but generally, everybody is home in election mode. So I guess from a positive perspective, this is your time to contact those legislators and talk to them. I don't think the way the bodies are currently seated that I saw anything come along that I would have considered unexpected. I think it was, kind of business as usual. There were no big surprises out there. I think we go forward probably without a lot of changes unless there's a big sweeping change within the, in the legislature itself. And I don't think anybody sees that forthcoming.
Okay. What about lack of agreement or action on groundwater protection? As that, with the situation in Saratoga and the like, are you concerned there about what may or may not be coming down the pike from a county perspective?
Always concerned, but nothing happened different than I had been telling a lot of those people would happen over time. I assumed that issue would take considerable study. I had told everybody that I didn't expect anything to come out of any magnitude before the end of the session, and it really didn't. And what they're trying to balance in Madison, is the balance between the environmental protection and the economic realities. And, no matter what business is proposed or developed, there are probably some impacts to the environment. And it's the job of the legislature, to minimize those impacts, to have everybody come out as unscathed as possible. But at the end of the day, there's a balance that needs to be created. And obviously, if you live in that specific area, the concern to you is at a much higher level than it is maybe to legislators in other parts of the state. And I don't mean that should happen, but that is the reality. And they're trying to balance that with the need for job creation and some of those other things. Government moves slowly, but sometimes that slow movement creates better solutions at the end of the day than if they quickly adopt something and then it isn't exactly what you're looking for.
Are you concerned about any aspects about what you've been hearing or from a county perspective?
From a county, this is a really interesting I'll call it dilemma within our county.
Right.
If I'm down in the southern part of the county, Saratoga specifically, there's a lot of concern about,
groundwater,
pending, implementation of a large CAFO down there. And they'd like to see additional ordinances,
right,
regulation, legislation, statute to protect them. If I talk to the other half of the residents of Wood County, where we have a large number of farms, they're opposed to any additional regulation, legislation, statutes. So it becomes somewhat compartmentalized.
Well, that's why I asked the question.
As to what happens. At the end of the day, one of the things that I've been a proponent of is developers' agreements. I think there's a way to do this outside of legislation that protects both industry and the environment in a way that could be done much quicker than legislating a solution. I don't think on the surface anybody can say, I hate farms or I dislike CAFOs. The bigger question, because if they didn't do any environmental damage or there was no impact, what would be the objection? So I think it makes more sense to identify the issues and address those. And some of those could be done through developers' agreements. And I will give you an example, and I'm going to use the absurd to make a point. The number of high cap wells is of great importance to most people. I don't think it matters if you have 1 million high cap wells or if you have one. The real issue is the drawdown of the water table. So if you had 1 million of them and you had no drawdown, it wouldn't really matter, would it? If you had one and it depleted the entire water supply, it would be a tremendous issue. So the bigger issue is the water table and what's going to happen to that. Again, 1 million wells, 1 million pumps never turned on, don't do a lot to create any concern. One in a drought year might cause tremendous concern. I would rather address that through drawdown levels, limits, to some of those pumping abilities and capacities, as opposed to wide and broad-ranging legislation that may or may not, bring you to a solution that you're really looking to have. And I think there's a lot of those issues that could be addressed that way. Buffers, setbacks, wind drift. When we're talking spray irrigation, could we do that in minimal wind conditions where there would be no real effect? I think all parties sitting down at a table could probably address those issues and come to much better conclusions in a much quicker fashion than happens through the legislative process.
But here's the problem, Lance. I've talked with Representative Krug about this. Is getting people to sit down to it. They won't even sit at the same room together. He's been an intermediary. Here, tell them this is what we want.
That's exactly been the problem. And I can confirm what Representative Krug told you. I have made that offer on many occasions to sit down and at least broker that conversation. And that's one issue. There's a lot of issues that face us in our communities that probably could be addressed in those ways. In one was, a real interesting one we had just recently at the county board level involving firewood being brought into our parks.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes,
one
I'm pretty good at the segue part. We passed a resolution that forbid bringing firewood into our parks. And yet when they stepped back and they said, well, there's a lot of wood that comes into the county that isn't firewood in the park, does it make sense to just restrict it in the park? We have logging trucks going through the community at all different times. Does it make sense to bring in wood that we're processing, let's say out of Dexterville, to a Wood County park in Grand Rapids if the guy across the street from the park can't bring in some dead jack pine that was in his yard? Do all those things make sense? From a county perspective, we thought we addressed the issue. They reconsidered it. There was considerable conversation. They were going to roll that regulation back. They were going to repeal that resolution or come forth with another one. And after considerable discussion, they decided to leave it intact because at the end of the day, preservation of the county parks and the land thereof, the trees, the forest, made more sense than what might be expended on firewood, certified firewood being brought into the park. But again, a local solution done much more quickly than can be done at the legislative level. And when you think about it, you have representatives, obviously, from all over the state that sit, in both the Senate and the Assembly, and they have differing views depending on where they live and how they do it. So the counties association take on all of this, generally speaking, is local control. We much prefer to see local control in every instance. And so it's extremely frustrating to me when I can't get parties to the table to talk about the issue.
Okay. You talk about local control. There have been instances where even with the Republican majority in the legislature where they're saying, no, we want some statewide standards. And local units of government, regardless of the issues or whether have gone, hold it, I thought you guys were the party of local control. No, we want some state standards here on this. And I could name some issues, but... and I don't
name a lot of issues.
Yeah, but I mean, it frustrates local officials.
What's interesting, I heard this, I was out in Washington recently, and I heard the other day, and it made tremendous sense. The party which is not in control of the legislature is always in favor of local control.
You're making my point. You're making my point.
Because they don't have control of that legislative
and
discussion.
And then the party that's in control, all of a sudden they realize there's a certain benefit to state standards.
That is true, and in some cases there are benefits to state standards. When you're thinking about some entities, they cross city, municipal, town lines. They cross county lines. And in some cases, they cross state lines, and you need federal regulation. So, I mean, there is a time and a place for all of that, and it certainly makes sense. But generally speaking, if we have the right to control things locally, we can do it in a more cost-effective manner and in a way that makes more sense to the local resident.
Transportation's been a big issue with you, the County Boards Association, everybody. Are you frustrated with the lack of action on long-term solutions to Wisconsin's transportation issues? They keep kicking.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, Carl. I sit on the Local Government Institute Board of Directors, where we have the League of Municipalities, the Towns Association, the Counties Association, and it's generally a think tank that comes up with nonpartisan or bipartisan solutions to issues. And about a year ago, a report was issued called Filling Potholes, and it was distributed statewide, and it gave about 14 solutions to this transportation issue, many of which were supported by the Secretary of the Department of Transportation. And yet, none of those were adopted to deal with this issue. And you cannot spend your way, through the issuance of debt to a solution long term. These are issues that need to be dealt with. And I don't think it's going to be a single solution. I think it will be a combination of all of those put together that probably will at some point make a difference. And those are, gas tax. It might be VMT, vehicle miles traveled. It's probably open road tolling. There's a myriad of solutions out there that would contribute to a long-term solution to that issue.
Okay. Once this blizzard blows out of here and we do get to back to real spring weather, we're looking at a pretty busy spring in Wood County. And by the way, if you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. We're visiting with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml, and our friends from RCCA Media are here as well. And check their website or your local cable channel to view a digital high-definition recording of this. But with we got the two big water ski shows coming. We got, Rafters Baseball always brings things. We got a lot of different things coming to Wood County and the central Wisconsin area this summer. Could be a pretty good economic boost to the area, could it not? And are we set and ready to handle it?
I think we're set, and I think we're ready, and it is a huge economic boost. Tourism is huge to our area. We're extremely lucky that we host the state water ski show tournament on an annual basis here in Wood County. It brings thousands of people into the community who spend tens of thousands of dollars, and we have a great facility at Lake Wazeecha out at the Southwood County Park. This year, because of that facility and how well that tournament has been run by the local officials who do that, we are hosting the World Tournament.
Yeah.
And that was headlines in the paper the other day. So I won't, go over that again, but you can certainly read about that. But, we have teams coming in from basically 5 different countries. It's a huge event. I've attended that event at different venues before. So another huge kudos to the aqua skiers, to Wood County, and the people here who have made that happen. That's going to be great. We have 3 campgrounds in our county campgrounds that are typically full. So tourism is extremely important. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some of you probably had the opportunity to see the Discover Wisconsin show.
I was going to ask you about
Wood
that.
County recently. Again, another feather in our cap and another thing that goes a really long way to helping the economic recovery and stability of our area.
Okay. Well, and looking long term, we have I've had the Wood County Ag Agent here, Mr. Lippert, and we've talked about Farm Technology Days. That's going to be another huge thing.
Yeah, we're a couple of years out.
Yeah, but I know he's been recruiting people to work on committees, and this is an opportunity he's mentioned for a lot of different groups can make some money because you need to feed a lot of people.
We're going to need a lot of help. I mean, for those of you who have attended that event elsewhere, and it's been close before. It's been in Marathon County. It's been in Portage County more recently. It takes thousands of people to pull this event off. You basically create a whole city in a matter of a couple of weeks. And it takes, like I said, thousands of volunteers to pull this off. It's a tremendous opportunity for local people to get involved, be out there and see what it's all about and what the agricultural community is about. The other part is sometimes it's just nice to bring the whole community together in a group effort to pull something off of this nature. And this is a huge event. We bid on it a few years ago. We were lucky enough to be selected, and we really do look forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, you mentioned the Discover Wisconsin segment on Wood County, and Wood County's been getting some good press. Can we turn that into economic development for our county?
The answer is yes. And what's interesting, I just got back. I've had the opportunity this year to travel, a fair amount as a representative of the Counties Association, and I get to meet with some of the best and brightest people from around the country. And some of the things you hear are extremely interesting, and sometimes I think we miss those opportunities. But, right now we got 77,000 unfilled high-tech jobs in the state of Wisconsin. Some of those are right here in Wood County, and we need to take advantage of them. But one of the things I thought was really interesting is, we need a 21st century workforce to address those problems that we have out there from an employment standpoint. We generally don't have a lack of jobs. We have a lack of employees. And I thought what was interesting the other day, I heard a speaker the other day, and he said, the biggest taxi company in the world doesn't own a single car. The biggest real estate company in the world, Airbnb, doesn't own any real estate. The biggest information company in the world owns no content. Some of the biggest retailers in the world don't own a store. And the biggest telecommunications company in the world owns no infrastructure. So it's really thinking outside the box. You don't need General Motors to build a plant in Wisconsin Rapids or Marshfield or Pittsfield, pick your spot, to be successful. You need innovative people to come up with solutions to today's problems. And you can work from anywhere if we have the build out of one of the things I've been talking about at the state level is infrastructure, meaning transportation and communication.
Right.
We need broadband capability everywhere. We need high enough speeds to be capable to run these types of businesses. And then we need to retain and attract the best and the brightest young workers in this country. Now, we have an advantage there because one of the things we talk about is, ample water, recreational opportunities. And those have been delineated and talked about in those Discover Wisconsin shows.
Well, here in Wisconsin Rapids, they said this town is as wired in terms of high-tech infrastructure as anything in the Silicon Valley because of the providers that we have here and the infrastructure that's been invested in here. And so there's no reason why we can't. And like you said, it's not. Everyone's thinking, well, we got to get this big, bulking factory, and no, your newer businesses now don't need a lot of. What they need is connection.
Connection, and you need to foster that entrepreneurship. When you look at the biggest businesses in the country right now, and you look where they were started, the biggest ones right now, they all started in a garage.
I know.
I don't care if you're talking, Apple Computer, Microsoft, you think of those people, Facebook, those are all
Renaissance here.
Renaissance here with the Paul family, originally. Yeah. But, it's amazing what can be done without that. But you do need to have build out of infrastructure. You have to have kids that have the ability to access that technology in our schools. There is a function for government. I tend to be a less government is good government person. But there is a function for government. And that function is to educate people, to provide those opportunities, to create and maintain infrastructure, and then have private industry fill those spaces, with good-paying jobs.
Okay. Well, anything else before I let you go that you wanted to get out to folks, or any thing as we await a snowmageddon?
Well, just one of the things we really quickly touched on. This is a really important year. You have elections going on. We talked about the legislature being home, but the one thing that I get the most tired of hearing people tell me in town is there's no choices and I didn't vote. There's huge choices out there. There's choices, do you like big government, small government? Do you like private property rights? Don't you like private property? Right. Where do you stand on the issues? And if you don't get out there and vote, you have no voice in it. And when you look at the amount of dollars you pay in property taxes, income tax, sales tax, you ought to have a vote as to where we spend those dollars.
Yeah. And basically, if you don't vote, don't complain.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, Lance, as always, I appreciate the time. And you and everybody in Wood County, happy Easter. Okay. And be safe out there in the next 72 hours. Okay. Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
And that's Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml with his monthly report here on the Morning Magazine, which, as always, is brought to you by Comfort Air.